Hey everyone, so I just wanted to do a quick recap of some of the stuff that we covered in class on Wednesday evening, just to clarify for the assignment so that you all have a reference for this, because I don't think we quite got to it in the videos from the week before. So I'm sitting here with my Guardian Heroine data template example, and kind of up to the point where I've taken the stuff that was in the main part here that was in the HTML file. I'm actually going to get rid of this now. So I just have data container on my page, and I have created this template, this quote template, and now I want to actually put it into, make it show up on the page. And I haven't done any styling yet, so we're going to go over all of that and kind of some of the strategies that you can use to try to mimic the styles that you see on websites, both for the assignment and for your final project and just in general. Just to sort of give you a sense of where I am right now, where things stand for me, at the moment I'm not actually adding anything to my page. So while I can see all of my content here coming out in the console, I can't actually see any of it on the page. So the first thing, of course, is going to be for me to change that console log using, or update that console log to actually append data to the page, which is where we will get to see it. And so by doing that, in order to do that, I am going to use jQuery. So we use jQuery in this case because it basically just makes it shorter, right? I mean, so jQuery is JavaScript. It's a JavaScript library, but basically what it is it's just like Google or similar to Google with visualizations, right? It has all of this stuff, all of these recipes for how to do things built in that we can reference and use without having to write all of that JavaScript ourselves, right? And again, the way that we tell the way we tell the computer that we're using jQuery, that we want it to look in the jQuery library for the mechanism, for the recipe of how to do the thing we're asking, is by doing this $sign and then round parentheses. And the round parentheses says, in this case, I want you to grab the HTML div, or the HTML item. It could technically be something other than a div, but it tends to be a div, called data container, that has the ID of data container. That's what that hash means. And I want you to, in this case, append quote template. Now, we're going to get to the sort of functional interactive portion in a moment, but just kind of point out that this should hopefully work. So I should see a lot of text on the page now. It's not going to look very good, but hopefully it will turn up. So there we go. So I got rid of my console log, which is why the console is empty, but I can see that all this stuff is now here. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of styling before we move on to, and I mean a very little bit of styling before we move on, just so I can kind of see what's happening here. So mostly I'm going to look at the style sheet. So my styles.css, I haven't actually defined anything yet. So I want to give some flavor to these. Now, I'm going to do this just a little bit made up to start, and then we're going to worry about bringing it into line. I get to use the Guardian because this is the example, but bringing it into line with the styles on the page in a few minutes. So I'm just going to say, I want font family is going to be Georgia. And actually this came up, so very often you see multiple font families, and you'll see something like, you might see a custom font and then something like Georgia and then serif, or you might see a custom font and then Arial and then sans serif, right? And basically what this is it's an ordered list. So it's saying, look first for this font. If you don't find this font, then use this font. And it basically is because lots of computers have Georgia installed. If for some reason they don't, and the person is watching this on a crazy old weird computer, it should at least have some version of a serif font. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say font size, let's make it, I'm going to say 18 pixels. I'll probably change that to M's later. I'm going to make it font weight bold. And I'm going to say text align center. Generally don't like center align text that much, but we'll give it a shot for now. For the whole quote, I'm going to do something similar, but mostly I'm going to make it a slightly different color. Very little of the text that you find on the web, especially body text, is likely to be is likely to be actually black. And I'm just going to make this Arial for distinction. And not bold, and I'll leave it centered, but instead I will say color is going to be, anytime you have 6 of the same number and a hexadecimal value, it means it is a shade of gray. 333 is a nice dark gray, so it's still pretty legible. What else do I have? Source, I'm going to make red. So again, I'm just sort of filling this in because I didn't have it here. Color red, and I think that's good for now. So hopefully I should see a little bit of styling now. Okay, so that seems to be working, although it seems strange that it doesn't look like I got my size very well. Oops, I think I forgot to change something. Yep, that's right. So that's actually a really good point. So see, I copied and pasted this style thinking, oh, I'll change it for whole quote. But what actually happened, I ended up writing 2 classes called main quote. And what's important to notice about this is that only the second class was expressed, right? So again, in CSS, just like in JavaScript, computer reads right to left, top to bottom. So this is essentially the equivalent of resetting the value of a variable, right? I created a class called main quote, I described all this stuff, and then I did it again, and so it's the second one that is going to take precedence. And this is actually the principle of the cascading in cascading style sheets, which gives us the extension CSS, is that if I specify something here, but then as we've seen in other cases, if it has 2 classes, we can actually use that to modify things within the styles of one thing within another. So this, of course, I meant to apply to whole quote, and that will hopefully be a little bit closer to what we're looking for. Okay, so here we go. It's getting a little bit more legible. So now I want to address the interactivity, right? So I want to add that sort of read more button, and I want it to affect the things that I intend for it to affect, so that I can do that show hide element. So I'm going to come back to my JavaScript, and the first thing I need to do is add a div for it, and I'm going to give it a class of read more, and I don't actually have to have anything in here except the read more text, because every single one is going to have that. But as Joanna has discussed previously, right, when we want to sort of hold things together, when we want to sort of move things around, whether that's show or hide or actually move them around the page, it's easier if we put them in a bucket first. So I'm going to take these additional bits of information and, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. And I'm going to wrap them in another div called more info. So so more info isn't really going to do anything for us other than be a container, but that is a very important role for it to serve. And I just want to make sure that I wrap it around the rest of my content. Make sure that's an end. Okay, plus, did I do that right? No. There we go. Okay, so here we are. I now have my more info thing. And the main thing is that we want to have more info only show when someone has actually clicked on the read more button. So the first thing that I can do, I'm going to create a class, I'm going to create that read more class, and I'm going to also make the text red and maybe bold. Color red, font weight bold, and for more info, right, my default visibility is going to be none, and we actually don't use visibility, we use display, and so the default is going to be none. Okay, so this is a little slightly different order than we did it in class, but it will produce the same effect. So what I ought to see again here is I should see every when I check my page, I should no longer see these quotes, right, or any of this stuff. I should really just see this plus a red read more. And there we go. Not exactly where we want it to be, so I'm actually going to, just to make it a little bit more sensible, I'm going to tweak the styling again, because, you know, again, the typography helps us here. So on the read more, I'm going to give it a, I can give it a float here. I can give it a float right. And so float is basically saying, is it right aligned or left aligned, but it refers to the div. So the text align here, right, the div is still taking up the entire width. Yeah, that's why that looks a little weird. Okay, maybe I won't do that. Maybe we'll do it in the center so it makes a little bit more visible sense. Let's say float center. Actually, I'm not sure if it's center or middle. Anyhow, and this is also highlights a really very true thing about CSS, which is like you kind of just mess around with it until it looks right. I guess middle wasn't right. Anyhow, so here we have our thing, and I actually want to make read more. The other thing I want to do with the CSS is put a, this doesn't seem to be cursor pointer on it, and that pointer thing is going to give us the hand, right? So again, we want to kind of indicate to our reader that there's something they can do. But this doesn't do anything yet, so we want to make sure that we add that functionality. So to do that, I need to create an event handler. And that event handler is going to be in jQuery. And so this is where we got into there was a little bit of confusion on Wednesday. So the issue is that we need to, this is what we're going to do is we're going to take this string. So again, this string, very similar to when we get a string out of JSON, right? When we get a string out of JSON, it's just a string. And then sometimes we use the word number if it's a number, or we use new date if it's a date or should be interpreted as a date. In this case, we use the $ and the round parentheses because we're saying, hey, take this chunk, take this big string, but treat it like jQuery, right? Treat it like HTML. And I'll follow Joanna's convention here of, and I need to make sure to change this in multiple places, right? So where this variable, I'm starting it with a $ to indicate that it is already jQueried, if that makes sense. It's already been sort of converted that way. Not everyone does this. It's not something I do generally, but it's a nice indicator. So now I've done that, and what I want to do is I want to add an event handler. So I want to say, look, when you click this thing, something should happen. So I'm going to start just by console logging something, because you know me, I just like to make sure things are working. So I'm going to say function, so I need to say, so quote template on click, click, right? And then I'm going to give it the name of the function, which is, I think we did something like toggle info, okay? And of course, for that to do anything, I do need to define the toggle info function. So I'm going to do that, and as I said, all I'm going to do is have it do a console log for the moment, just so I can see that something is happening. Oops. Toggle T. Okay. So because quote template has already been jQueryfied, I don't need to wrap it in the $ and parentheses here. And again, I just created a very, very simple console log statement in my toggle info. We'll worry about the classes in a few minutes. So now what I would hope to find is that if I click on one of these things, okay, and see it's just adding a count for all of them, right? But basically I can see, okay, something is working. So when we come back, we're going to deal with the styling, so adding the class to make that read more actually expand and collapse our more info section. And then we'll take a closer look at how to sort of really dig into the styles that you find online and make them work for your project. So we will be back in a few minutes. I will see you all then.